Hello, everyone. It's Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, I hope everybody is doing okay today. I have a very good guest with me. He's a friend of the show, and he's been on the show once before. This is Guy McPhearson. He is an American scientist, professor emeritus of natural resources and ecology and evolutionary biology at the University of Arizona. Um, Guy, I think, is best known because essentially his argument is we're screwed, learn to live with it. And I got to be honest, when he was on the show once before, my feeling was kind of like, oh man, that sounds bad, but perhaps there's a difference of opinion on something like this. And then the UN report comes up with a hair on fire report, like just regular scientists, these guys, these iron-jawed, impartial, calm, collected. And in this case, you have 10, 15 years and you're screwed. Like that's the level of hair on fire. This isn't 2100. This is, you have 14 years. I think it was like 14 years to get your life in order. Otherwise, it's done. Donald Trump has a report. I think this is in August, a preliminary report. And in it, buried 500 pages within it, it says something to the effect of, by 2100, the world is going to hit 7 degrees. Now, the argument that's been used up to this point has only been 2. And this has gone all the way up to 7. This is a mind-blowing change in regards to the way we're talking about climate. Guy, I'm going to bring you in to talk about each one successively. The first one, please introduce yourself to the audience. I'm sorry.
Well, thanks for having me on the show again, Jamarl. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. And I love the transition that you've made, that you've gone through from skepticism to holy crap, this is the real deal, because it is the real deal. And you also are willing to admit, as so few people I meet are, you're willing to admit this. This is almost impossible to take in, to actually take this in and live your daily life accordingly is essentially possible. At some level, you have to use cognitive dissonance. You have to block this out.
Yes.
You get paralyzed. Now, I've been living with it for 16 years, so you could argue that it's a little easier for me than it is for the average person. But still, I go through, I'm still flossing my teeth. I'm still doing those daily activities that we all do that qualify us as normal. And yet my hair's been on fire for a long time.
I don't think there's any other way to do it. I mean, how do you take in the end of human existence? And maybe not necessarily the end of human existence, but at the very least, a drastic and radical change to our affairs in one or two ways. Humanity gets to the point of saying, we got to do something about this, not messing around the edges. Like we need to have a Herculean approach commiserate with the World War II effort, where there is a radical focus on a redefinition of what it means to be a person and what it means to live on this particular planet. And not just that, to go further than that, to try to actually find solutions and put human intellect into a solution. That will require a radical transition by itself, or the secondary of prepare to die. Like both of those things require a certain degree of radical. It's either reality is going to affect itself or inflict itself upon the human experience one way or the other. That's the way I look at it. But see, the difference is I looked at it kind of that way in the beginning. My biggest thing was, from a cultural standpoint, humanity is ill prepared to deal with the scenario. And, like I was talking to you before, this idea of the nice grandmother who loves her kid immensely and stops by McDonald's to get him a hamburger and drives him in the car to deliver that hamburger to that kid, not realizing that as she smiles with this kind of loving nature of watching your kid devour that piece of meat, that she is contributing to the end of the world through animal agriculture and through driving that car. Both of those things are considered completely normal, and both of those things to some degree contribute to the scenario that we have facing.
And all of that, she's being nice. She's
Be
being
nice.
a grandmother. This culture rewards her for that activity, as probably it should. What's wrong with grandmother being nice to her grandchild?
Yeah.
Nothing.
It's a cultural phenomena. Like, it's like, how do you change culture? And how do you do it not in 100 years, in like 10? Like, this is not one of those things, because even under the regular scientific model of the stuff, there's like 10 years built into whatever takes place. So even if you stop today on a dime, there is 10 years built into the process. And the UN scientists are saying you have like 14, 15 years to make this work. Change, like a revolutionary change of culture in 14 to 15 years. And you look at that and say, we're screwed.
You
Like,
know,
we don't even have, I do a video on climate change, nobody watches. Seriously, no, seriously.
the
Nobody
Secretary General of the United Nations yesterday said we have until 2020 to turn this thing around. We got 14 months, in other words, to turn this thing around. Well, we're not going to turn anything around in 14 months. The only thing of significance that might happen in the next 14 months is that this set of living arrangements itself might go away. There might be a collapse on the stock market or the bond market or whatever that causes the Great Depression version 2.0, but much greater. And then we won't be flying anything or driving anything or picking up hamburgers at Burger King or whatever. And then global dimming will get us. Right? I mean, the absence of global dimming will heat up the planet so much in a very short period of time that there's no way we adapt. So yes, it's dire, it's horrible, it's horrific, and you gotta live.
Just so we're clear, please explain to people what global dimming is. Some people might not have seen the last video that you were here on.
Right, at the same time, industrial activity produces greenhouse gases that we all know heat the planet by holding the long wave radiation close to the planet. It's called the greenhouse effect because like a greenhouse, or like your car, which is greenhouse on wheels, the incoming sunlight is trapped. The long wave radiation can't get back out of the windows. It's the same here on planet Earth. It comes in, the greenhouse gases hold a certain amount of it in, prevent it from going back out into space. So at the same time industrial activity does that, produces those greenhouse gases, industrial activity also produces aerosols. The other phrase for global dimming is the aerosol masking effect. These aerosols go up into the atmosphere and serve as umbrellas or mirrors to prevent the sunlight from striking the earth to begin with. So we're simultaneously putting up a bunch of umbrellas and putting on blankets. And if we stop putting up the umbrellas, we close up all the umbrellas that are protecting planet Earth right now by cessation of industrial activity or even by reducing industrial activity, the planet heats up catastrophically. It's the classic damned if you do, damned if you don't situation.
Wow. Wow. Let me ask you this, the UN report, could you explain that report to, let's say, the layperson? I mean, I was reading the reviews on that report, and it seemed like a hair on fire report, if I've ever seen a hair on fire report. I mean, even not necessarily taking it within your context, just even going to the degree that the UN was going, could you explain it from their perspective?
Right, so this is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, one of the most conservative scientific bodies on Earth and perhaps in the history of the planet. And they have concluded that we have until 2030, 11 years and a couple of months, to quote, solve the greenhouse effect. After that, we are beyond the point at which our actions are capable of making any difference to what goes on because we triggered so many self-reinforcing feedback loops. Well, bear in mind this is the same United Nations supported group. This one is called the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. It's a United Nations group. It was the United Nations Advisory Group on Greenhouse Gases in 1990 that said we couldn't cross 1 degree Celsius above the 1750 baseline. And it was the head of the New York office of the United Nations Environment Program who in late June of 1989 said we had 10 years left. Somebody doesn't have the math quite figured out here. Either we had 10 years left in 1989, and that 10 years is long behind us, or we had 1 degree and we can't cross that, and we crossed that 1 degree a long time ago, or we still have 11 years and a couple of months left here in 2018, or according to the Secretary General of the United Nations from a couple of days ago, we have 14 months left. I see a lot of obfuscation out there. I think that there is either an attempt to confuse people, or the people who are presenting the information are confused themselves. So it's no surprise to me that the Trump administration comes out and says, look, it's a done deal. Previously, I said it was a Chinese hoax, but now I agree with the IPCC, with the United Nations. It's a done deal. We're screwed anyway, so pedal to the metal, baby. And that's been the response.
That's the other part that I want to get to, the Trump thing. So I did a report. The Hill reported that 500 pages within a preliminary report by Donald Trump, that there was a phrase, or there was the point where the Trump administration himself, who's this was a Chinese hoax, all of a sudden turns tail and says, by 2100, we're going to hit 7 degrees. That is a magnificent number. Like, I read that number and it jumps off the page like, what? Like, the argument up to this point has been 2 degrees. And he's talking about 7 degrees. This is the guy that doesn't believe in climate change, is talking about human-directed activity is going to cause 7 degrees. That's two things. What are the repercussions of that for human beings on this planet? And are you going to chest stomp, seeing as to some degree this is an approval, not just an approval, somewhat a validation of what you've been saying for the past 15 years?
No chest thumping, because nobody wanted to be more wrong than me. Believe me, I do not want the planet to warm up catastrophically in any period of time, whether it's 2100, whether it's 2030, whether it's 2025, whether it's next week. I don't benefit in any way by dying. And that's what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say it, but the 7 degree change, that's 7 degrees Fahrenheit, or approximately 3.5 or 4 degrees Celsius, that means human extinction, because already the climate is changing too rapidly for us and many other organisms to keep up. East Island, one of the small Hawaiian islands, disappeared last week. It went under the ocean. It won't be seen again. In the not too distant future, that's us. That's us as a species. We'll join the other 6 species in the genus Homo to go extinct. Not just because of sea level rise, obviously, but because we're losing habitat. We're losing habitat for our own species on planet Earth. We can't grow the food. We can't grow the animals that eat the food, that provide food for us. Even if we all go vegan, there's not enough plant life on the planet to produce everybody, to support everybody going, keep vegan. We're beyond the point of no return at this point. We've triggered so many self-reinforcing feedback loops, or so-called positive feedbacks, that we're done. It's just a matter of time. The United Nations is finally pointing out it's just a matter of time, even though they use the classic shifting baseline again to claim that the Industrial Revolution began in 1880 when it actually began in 1750. That's by common scientific acceptance. So we're done. We're done. We're done. Whether you want to dream that we're going to last for another however many years it is between now and 2100, whether you want to dream that that's possible, whether you want to dream it's just until 2030, whether you want to dream it's until its civilization, industrial civilization collapses, there's no turning back here. The Trump administration finally gets on board while adhering to the old 20 and 100 canard, which most climate scientists can't seem to escape talking about.